Alex Rogers stood at the edge of the crowded emergency council chamber, watching with growing frustration. As junior diplomatic liaison for humans on Harmony 7 station, he wasn't supposed to be making big decisions. His job was translating cultural differences and filing reports. Yet here he was, witnessing something remarkable. 17 alien species, all known throughout the galaxy for their courage and strength, were finding clever excuses to look away from the screen showing the distress call. The mining colony on Epsilon 9 had been sending emergency signals for 3 days straight. Their antimatter storage facility was failing. If it collapsed completely, it wouldn't just destroy the colony. The entire moon might be at risk. One by one, the mighty races of the Galactic Alliance offered reasons why they couldn't help. "The colony administrators have ancestral blood ties to our enemies," said the Volturi representative, his lion-like mane bristling with false indignation. "Our warrior code forbids us from assisting them." The Krell ambassador clicked her reinforced exoskeleton plates together. "Our religious teachings are clear. Such events must be seen as natural cosmic occurrences. Interference would violate our most sacred principles." Alex fought the urge to laugh. The Krell had no problem interfering when valuable resources were at stake. The Zinthar battle fleet commander, whose ships could outrun anything in the galaxy, claimed urgent defensive drills prevented their involvement. The Dromari void swimmers, who could survive the vacuum of space without equipment, cited ceremonial obligations. Even the Lithians, whose silicon-based bodies could withstand radiation levels that would kill humans in seconds, found diplomatic reasons to decline assistance. Alex glanced at the human delegation. Admiral Kate Dawson sat quietly tapping her fingers on the polished council table. Unlike the other species showing dramatic displays of regret, the humans simply exchanged knowing looks. The Galactic Overseer, a tall blue-skinned being, finally turned to the human delegation with obvious reluctance. Everyone in the Alliance knew humans were the most cautious species. Their reputation for avoiding risk was legendary. "The Earth representatives have yet to speak," the Overseer noted, "though perhaps there is no need. Your species' position on dangerous rescue operations is well documented." Admiral Dawson simply stood up. At just under 6 feet tall, she was small compared to most alien representatives, but her calm confidence filled the room. "The Earth fleet will respond to the distress call," she said simply. "Our rescue ships are already being prepared." A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. The Volturi commander's yellow eyes widened. The Krell ambassador's antennae twitched in shock. "Admiral," the Overseer spoke carefully, "the radiation levels near the facility are beyond safe parameters even for short exposure. Your environmental suits and ship shielding are not rated for such conditions." Kate gave a small smile. "We're aware of the challenges, and we're going anyway." Alex watched the reactions around the room. Surprise, confusion, and something else. Embarrassment. As the Admiral turned to leave, she nodded to Alex. "Rogers, I need you at the fleet briefing. We have plans to make." Walking through the station's corridors toward the human sector, Alex finally asked the question burning in his mind. "Admiral, they're right about our ships not being designed for this. How are we going to pull this off?" Kate's expression was determined. "Carefully, methodically, and with every safety precaution we can manage in the limited time we have." She paused. "They call us cowards because we're cautious. Today they'll learn why we're cautious, and that it has nothing to do with cowardice." Lieutenant Joe Martins nearly spilled his coffee when Admiral Kate Dawson delivered the news to the human contingent gathered in their section of Harmony 7. "We're what?" he asked, his eyes wide. "With all respect, Admiral, we have only 3 ships here, and none of them are built for high-radiation rescue operations." The room, filled with 20 human crew members from Earth's small diplomatic fleet, fell silent. Everyone knew what Joe meant. Human ships were safe and reliable, but they weren't designed for extreme conditions like those on Epsilon 9. "Everyone in the Alliance knows that too," Kate replied, her voice steady even as her fingers tapped nervously on the table. They're counting on it, actually. The mighty races get to keep their brave reputations intact, while the cowardly humans either back down or die trying. The briefing room grew quieter still. In the 40 years since humans had joined the Galactic Alliance, they'd quickly gained a reputation as the most careful species in known space. Other races mocked human safety protocols as excessive. Every human ship had backup systems for their backup systems. Human environmental suits were triple redundant, while most species used single-layer protection. Human vessels maintained distance margins during travel that other species found ridiculous. Dr. Lisa Franklin, Chief Medical Officer with 15 years of experience in space medicine, shook her head. "They've never understood us," she said. "They call us cowards because we check our equipment 3 times, because we run simulations before attempting difficult maneuvers, because we won't take unnecessary risks. What they don't get," continued Kate, "is that we're cautious because we're fragile, not because we're afraid." Commander Sam Foster, captain of the U.S. Constellation, leaned forward. "So what's the plan, Admiral? How do we save 300 colonists with ships not designed to handle those radiation levels?" "We adapt," Kate answered simply. "What's our greatest strength as a species?" "Problem solving," replied Chief Engineer Ben Wilson without hesitation. "Humans can't breathe in space like the Dromeri or withstand radiation like the Lithians, so we build better gear instead." Kate nodded. "Exactly. And that's why I've called in Ben to lead our modifications. We have 18 hours before the antimatter containment on Epsilon 9 fails completely. We need to turn our diplomatic vessels into rescue ships in less than a day." Ben ran a hand through his short brown hair, his mind already racing through possibilities. "It's not impossible. The U.S. Horizon has the newest shield configuration. If we divert power from non-essential systems and retrofit the emergency radiation plating from the station's maintenance bay, will it be enough?" asked Joe, voicing the question everyone was thinking. Ben's face was serious. "Not for long-term exposure. But we might be able to create a window of opportunity. Get in, get the colonists, get out before radiation levels become fatal." "How tight will that window be?" pressed Sam. Running some rough calculations, Ben worked quickly on his tablet. "With everything we can possibly do to the ships in 18 hours, maybe 20 minutes of safe exposure time." A low whistle escaped Joe's lips. 20 minutes to land, evacuate 300 people, and take off again. 17 minutes, corrected Ben. "We need a 3-minute margin of safety." Kate looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "I won't order anyone to volunteer for this mission. The risk is significant." One by one, the humans in the room stood up. No dramatic speeches were made. No chest-thumping declarations of bravery. Just quiet determination. "Let's get to work," said Ben, already heading toward the door. "We've got 18 hours to do a month's worth of modifications." Kate watched her team disperse to their tasks, each person focused and determined. "And today," she said softly, "we're going to show them the difference between caution and cowardice." Chief Engineer Ben Wilson hadn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes were red-rimmed as he examined the modifications to the U.S. Horizon. According to all standard engineering protocols, what they were attempting shouldn't be possible in less than a month. But they didn't have a month. They had 18 hours before the antimatter containment on Epsilon 9 failed completely. The Horizon's engine room buzzed with activity. Human engineers and technicians moved with practiced efficiency, installing additional radiation shielding torn from the station's maintenance supplies. Others reconfigured power distribution systems to boost the ship's protective fields. Ben gathered the volunteer crew in the ship's mess hall for a final briefing. 20 faces looked back at him, all human, all aware of the risk they were taking. "Let me be completely clear about our situation," Ben said, projecting diagrams onto the wall screen. "Even with our modifications, the radiation shields won't hold for more than 20 minutes at the levels we'll encounter near the colony." He pointed to a blinking timer on the display. That gives us exactly 17 minutes to get in, secure the colonists, and get out. Minute 18 is when we start dying. No one flinched at his bluntness. Humans preferred honest assessments of danger. Questions? Ben asked. Lieutenant Maria Vasquez raised her hand. What about the colony's radiation levels? Will the colonists survive the transfer process? Dr. Franklin has modified our emergency medical shields, Ben replied. They'll provide temporary protection during evacuation. The briefing continued with detailed assignments for each crew member. Every second of their 17-minute window was planned with precision. Outside the mess hall viewport, Ben noticed several alien observers had gathered. Word had spread quickly through Harmony 7 that the humans were actually preparing for a rescue mission. Many had come to witness what they assumed would be humans backing down when faced with the reality of their plan. The Krell ambassador clicked his mandibles in what translated as condescending amusement as he was briefed on the modifications. You've altered your shield configuration, the ambassador noted, his translator converting the clicks and whistles into English. Interesting, but ultimately futile. You'll incinerate yourselves. Your species' biological composition cannot withstand such conditions. Captain Olivia Green, who would command the Horizon during the mission, met the ambassador's compound eyes without blinking. That's why we're not going to withstand them, she replied calmly. We're going to get in and get out before they become lethal. It's called calculated risk. The Krell's translator faltered, then produced a string of confused clicks. The concept apparently had no direct translation in Krell language. You understand the difference between courage and recklessness, yes? Olivia continued. We're not being reckless. Every step is measured, every second accounted for. The gathered aliens exchanged glances. The Volturi representative's mane bristled slightly. If you understand the danger so precisely, he growled, why attempt the rescue at all? Ben looked up from his work. Because 300 people will die if we don't. People you've never met, pointed out the Dromeri observer. People not of your species. Doesn't matter, Ben replied, turning back to his calibrations. They asked for help. As the alien observers departed, murmuring among themselves, Ben felt a small flicker of satisfaction. Whether or not they succeeded, they had already challenged the aliens' understanding of courage. Final systems check, he announced to his team. Launch in 60 minutes. The U.S. Horizon approached Epsilon 9 alone. Its sister ships, the Constellation and the Venture, maintained position just beyond the danger zone, ready to receive evacuees once the rescue began. Only the Horizon would attempt landing on the moon's surface. Captain Olivia Green sat in the command chair, her back straight and her expression focused. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was none of the dramatic farewells or battle chants that might have accompanied a Volturi mission. Just humans doing what needed to be done. Entering Epsilon 9's orbital path, announced Lieutenant Joe Martinez from the pilot station. Radiation levels already at twice normal safety parameters. Olivia nodded. Activate enhanced shields. The ship hummed as the modified shield system engaged. Blue energy flickered visible around the hull as it absorbed the first waves of radiation. Shield integrity at 97%, reported Security Chief Maria Vasquez. Her station displayed a countdown timer. 20 o'clock minutes. Noochen, the communications officer, suddenly straightened in his chair. Captain, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. On screen, Olivia ordered. The main view screen displayed the Galactic Overseer's blue face. Behind him stood several council representatives, including the Volturi commander and the Krell ambassador. Captain Green, the Overseer began formally. The Council wishes to offer official diplomatic regrets for your imminent loss. Your species' willingness to attempt this rescue will be noted in Alliance records, regardless of the outcome. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They were being given last rites before they'd even begun. Thank you, Overseer, Olivia replied, keeping her voice level. But perhaps you might want to hold those regrets for now. Noah Chen muted the transmission for a moment. "They're already writing our obituary," he said with a hint of anger. "Send back a message," Olivia decided. "Tell them. Regrets premature. We'll accept congratulations instead." Noah grinned as he transmitted the message, then cut the connection. The approach to Epsilon 9 followed the carefully plotted course Venn had calculated. The horizon dove through radiation clouds that made their sensors emit warning signals continuously. The shields, enhanced with every piece of technology they could borrow, steal, or improvise, glowed increasingly bright blue with absorbed energy. "Shield integrity at 82%, reported Maria, her eyes on the timer. 17 minutes on the clock starting. Now, the horizon descended through the thin atmosphere of Epsilon 9, aiming for a landing zone less than a kilometer from the colony's main habitat dome. Through the forward viewport, they could see the antimatter facility in the distance, venting dangerous, shimmering energy into the atmosphere. Radiation levels rising faster than projected. Then Wilson reported from engineering. "The containment failure is accelerating." "Can we still complete the mission?" Olivia asked bluntly. "Yes, but we'll have to work faster. I recommend reducing our safety margin from 3 minutes to 2. Olivia considered this for exactly 2 seconds. "Approved. Update the timeline." The horizon touched down with a slight bump. Outside, the landscape was bathed in an eerie blue light from the failing antimatter containment. "Landing complete," Joe announced. 16 minutes remaining. Olivia stood, activating her specially modified environmental suit. Around her, the rescue team did the same. Each suit featured additional radiation shielding, but would only protect them for the planned mission duration. "Status of the colony?" she asked. "Life signs detected in the main habitat," Maria replied. "Environmental systems appear compromised. They're likely in emergency protocols." Olivia took a deep breath, surveying her team one last time. "Let's go bring them home," she ordered. The colony habitat dome looked worse up close than it had from orbit. Cracks webbed across several sections, hastily sealed with emergency patches. The main airlock still functioned, but its control panel flickered erratically. Captain Olivia Green led the rescue team across the short distance from the horizon, their boots kicking up dust on the moon's surface. Each step was purposeful. No wasted motion, no wasted time. 15 minutes remaining. Maria Vasquez reported through the comm system. Lieutenant Joe Martins worked quickly to override the airlock security, which had partially failed during the initial antimatter surge. After 30 seconds, the outer door slid open with a reluctant groan. "Atmosphere inside is thin but breathable," reported Dr. Lisa Franklin, checking her instruments. "Keep suits sealed anyway. Radiation levels are elevated." The team moved inside, the airlock cycling much slower than normal. As the inner door finally opened, they were met with a scene of controlled desperation. The colony's main chamber was crowded with people. Nearly 300 colonists were huddled together, most wearing pressure suits or breathing masks. The first antimatter surge had damaged life support, and the air was noticeably thin even to the human rescuers in their sealed suits. An older man with gray hair and a colony administrator's uniform approached them. His face showed equal parts exhaustion and disbelief. "Earth Fleet?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "We thought no one was coming." The Alliance said a solution was being debated. "Debate's over," Joe replied as he began organizing evacuation groups. "First shuttle leaves in 3 minutes. Priority to children, injured, and essential personnel." The administrator, who introduced himself as Colony Director Frank Howard, quickly recovered from his shock and began helping coordinate. "We have 312 people," he explained. 17 injured in the initial surge, including 3 Lithian researchers. Dr. Franklin moved through the crowd, quickly assessing the injured. She paused at a small Lithian child struggling with an oversized breathing apparatus designed for adult proportions. "This won't do," she murmured, quickly reconfiguring the human child's mask for the alien's unusual physiology. The child's silicon-based skin sparkled with what might have been gratitude. 13 minutes remaining, Maria announced over the comm. The first evacuation shuttle, loaded beyond recommended capacity with 90 colonists, lifted off toward the waiting constellation in orbit. Children clung to parents, researchers clutched data tablets, and everyone moved with the urgent understanding that every second mattered. The second shuttle was being filled as Captain Green supervised the download of the colony's scientific data, research that represented 15 years of work studying Epsilon 9's unique mineral formations. The data's as important as the people, Frank insisted. This research could help prevent similar containment failures in the future. Olivia nodded, understanding completely. Humans valued both lives and knowledge. Shield integrity at 41%, came the update from Ben Wilson aboard the Horizon. Radiation levels increasing faster than projected. The antimatter containment is degrading exponentially. The second shuttle, filled with another 80 colonists, departed for the venture. The third began loading immediately. 10 minutes remaining, Maria reported, her voice tense but controlled. Dr. Franklin approached Olivia. Captain, we have a problem. 2 of the injured colonists are in critical condition, too unstable to move in the time we have left. Olivia didn't hesitate. Set up emergency treatment in the shuttle. We'll stabilize them in transit. Frank Howard looked at Olivia with newfound respect. I've worked with 7 species in my career. None would have come for us knowing the risk. Why did you? 9 minutes. Maria interrupted before Olivia could answer. We'll have this conversation later, Olivia promised. Right now, let's get your people home. With 5 minutes remaining on their survivability clock, the final group of colonists was being loaded onto the last shuttle. Captain Olivia Green stood at the habitat's main console, verifying that no one had been left behind in the outlying research modules. Final sweep complete, Maria Vasquez confirmed, her voice slightly strained from the exertion of helping move injured colonists. All sectors clear. 312 colonists accounted for. The last shuttle, containing 70 colonists including the most seriously injured, lifted off toward the constellation. As it cleared the moon's thin atmosphere, the rescue team allowed themselves a moment of collective relief. It lasted exactly 12 seconds. Chief Engineer Ben Wilson's voice crackled over the comm system, the static indicating increasing radiation interference. Captain, we have a problem. The antimatter containment is failing faster than predicted. The Horizon's engines are showing damage from radiation exposure. Olivia, Joe, Lisa, and Maria exchanged quick glances as they made their way back toward their ship. How bad? Olivia asked simply. Bad enough, Ben replied. Engine efficiency down to 47%. At current deterioration rates, we won't reach minimum safe distance before detonation. Olivia's mind raced through options. What about the Constellation and Venture? They have evacuees aboard. They need to start accelerating now to clear the blast radius, Ben said. At full emergency thrust, they should make it to safety. But us, his voice trailed off. Captain Green didn't hesitate. Order them to full emergency acceleration immediately. We'll find another way. As the other human ships began to pull away with their precious cargo of survivors, the 4 officers reached the Horizon. The radiation levels around the ship were now high enough that their suit alarms were blaring continuous warnings. 4 minutes remaining until lethal exposure, Maria noted. Inside the Horizon, the situation looked even worse up close. Ben showed them the engine diagnostic panel, where red warning indicators dominated the display. Primary propulsion is failing, he explained. Even if we launched now, we'd only reach half the necessary speed to escape the blast radius. Joe Martinez moved to the navigation console, his fingers flying over the controls. What about alternatives? There's the colony's emergency vessel, the mining shuttle. Lisa asked. It's not designed for space travel beyond moon orbit. It doesn't need to be, Joe replied, his eyes lighting up. We just need it to get far enough away. He pulled up a diagram of the Epsilon system. If we redirect power from life support to the engines and plot a slingshot around Epsilon 9's third moon, we might be able to reach escape velocity. Might is better odds than we had 20 minutes ago. Olivia decided immediately. Let's move. The team abandoned the horizon, racing toward the small mining shuttle parked near the colony's auxiliary landing pad. The little vessel was ugly and utilitarian, designed for short hops to mineral collection sites, not escaping antimatter explosions. 2 minutes to lethal exposure, Maria reported as they boarded. Ben immediately began rerouting power systems while Joe prepped for launch. Lisa secured their emergency medical supplies, knowing they would all need radiation treatment regardless of whether they escape the blast. Will the Galactic Council send help once they realize we succeeded with the evacuation? Lisa asked as the shuttle's engines rumbled to life. We're not waiting to find out, Olivia replied. She opened a channel to the retreating Earth ships. Constellation, Venture, this is green. Horizon compromised. We're attempting escape via mining shuttle. Continue to safe distance with evacuees. That's an order. The shuttle lifted off, shuddering violently as its engines strained beyond their design specifications. Setting course for slingshot maneuver, Joe announced, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. If this works, it'll be the craziest thing I've ever done. When this works, Olivia corrected him, it'll be the craziest thing any of us have ever survived. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Admiral Kate Dawson stood before the gathered representatives of 17 advanced species, playing the final transmission from the Horizon's mining shuttle on the main view screen. The video quality was poor, distorted by radiation, and the shuttle's basic transmission equipment. It showed Captain Olivia Green, her uniform torn and face streaked with sweat, shouting coordinates as Lieutenant Joe Martinez piloted manually through a massive radiation storm. Behind them, Dr. Lisa Franklin could be seen administering emergency radiation treatment to Security Chief Maria Vasquez, whose exposure levels had already exceeded what humans considered survivable limits. Approaching slingshot position, Joe's voice crackled through the speakers. Structural integrity at 38%. Hold it together, Olivia ordered, though it wasn't clear if she was speaking to the shuttle or her crew. Then came the moment everyone was watching for. Epsilon 9's antimatter facility detonated in the background, creating a blinding flash that temporarily overwhelmed the shuttle's primitive sensors. The screen filled with static, and the transmission cut off. For 3 full minutes, no one in the council chamber spoke. The Volturi High Commander's impressive mane had drooped in apparent shame. The Krell ambassador's exoskeleton had paled to an ashen gray. Even the Lithians, normally impossible to read, seemed subdued. Admiral Dawson stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion as she waited out the silence. Finally, the Galactic Overseer spoke. The Alliance extends its deepest condolences for your loss. Admiral, your officer's sacrifice will be recorded in the... A young human communications officer burst into the chamber, interrupting the formal speech. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the constellation. The main screen flickered to life, showing the constellation's medical bay. There, being treated by emergency medical staff, were Captain Green and her 3 officers. They looked terrible. Radiation burns covered exposed skin. Medical sensors beeped with alarming readings, and all 4 were clearly in pain, but they were undeniably alive. The mining shuttle survived. The Overseer's voice contained more emotion than any human had ever heard from a Dromari. Barely, replied Captain Sam Foster of the Constellation. We picked them up at the edge of the system. The shuttle itself broke apart minutes after they were rescued. Captain Green looked directly at the camera, her voice weak but determined. 312 lives saved. Colony research data preserved. Mission accomplished. Admiral Dawson finally allowed herself a small smile before turning to face the council. Her expression became neutral again, but her eyes remained fierce. The Earth Fleet respectfully requests that the term human caution replace human cowardice in all future Alliance communications. The Galactic Overseer, whose species had evolved from apex predators who feared nothing, stood slowly. His tall blue form seemed less imposing somehow as he bowed his head slightly toward Dawson. "Request granted, with our profound apologies." His translator conveyed genuine respect. "Today we have learned that there are many forms of courage, and perhaps the human variety, the willingness to risk everything despite understanding exactly how fragile you are, may be the rarest and most valuable of all." The Volturi commander stepped forward. "In 15,000 years of space travel, my people have never witnessed such a rescue. We would be honored to learn your risk assessment protocols." One by one, representatives from each species offered similar sentiments. The Krell ambassador even requested a cultural exchange program to better understand the concept of calculated risk. Admiral Dawson nodded to each in turn, then quietly added, "We don't walk into danger because we aren't afraid. We walk into danger despite being afraid, because some things matter more than fear." As the council session ended, discussions had already begun about incorporating human safety standards into Alliance protocols. No one used the word cowardly to describe the careful preparation and triple redundant systems humans preferred. Instead, they had a new phrase: human courage. The bravery to acknowledge danger, prepare for it thoroughly, and face it anyway when lives were at stake.